How's it going? Welcome back to the channel. As you're already aware by now, two things happened on Saturday. Well, technically three things. The march to Gaza, which ended a total failure. They started getting their people detained because they're rioting just like they are here in the States. The Army's 250th birthday celebration, parade, and also Donald Trump's birthday, June 14th. Yeah, a lot of things didn't go as to plan as kind of what I expected. The military, we are not known for marching, excuse me, in unison all the time. We do it in short steps, especially when someone's calling cadence or we have a beat to go by. Normally, when we're doing marches for changes, command ceremonies, things like that, there's always someone playing the drums, keep you in step, or we do cadence. For this particular event, there was no cadence callers. They marched silently, and they were out of step. Anyone who's been in the military more than a day knows that we have to do cadence. We have to do some type of rhythmic beat for everyone to stay in step, especially when it's a lot of people. Especially because when noise going around, a lot of people know that. That's why we can't stay in step to keep from stepping on each other's heels and stuff when we're in the formation. A lot of people think that this parade was to celebrate Donald Trump, when in actuality, Donald Trump is celebrating his birthday on the same day as the Army celebrates their birthday. So and people think, oh, we've never done this before. Yes, the military, well, the Army specifically has celebrated his birthday. They had birthday marches on, in Washington at the Hill, you know, numerous times. Not recently. I think it's like either 28 days or 28 years before or like 38 years before, something like that. I didn't do too much research on it, but it was like in 1991, I believe. So it was like 30 something years ago that they've done it, after Desert Storm. But what people think, especially what I'm about to show you, is that they think that, oh, people that protest are never in the military. They're not. A lot of soldiers, when we do march, we have to be in cadence because if you're not calling cadence, everyone will start to go on their own natural rhythm and start going out of the same cadence as everyone else is in. So let's get into it.
Soldiers in Trump's military parade were silently protesting. Many people noticed the soldiers didn't march in unison. They weren't in step, the lines were crooked, some looked like they didn't want to be there at all. Compare that.
Okay, them standing around like that was prior to the marching. You're not going to stand around, looking for stuff if you're in a march. So they were probably staged, getting ready to take off marching, the rest, waiting for commands. And, they're talking about straight. When you march it in a line, it takes a lot to keep one formation, well, make formation go from one point to another point. Cadence callers. We have to have a cadence caller. Cadence callers are typically on the left side of formation when you're calling cadence. There was no cadence callers. It was just a bunch of people stacked in a column, marching one direction. If anything, they were probably in route step march, a lot of them. Route step march until we can walk in our own cadence, especially if we're traveling long distances. But if we're moving in an organized formation with rhythm or a cadence, there's usually someone to the left of the formation, either a platoon sergeant, squad leader, some type of NCO or an officer that will lead that formation from point A to point B. But when you walk in the distance they were walking, there's usually just a drum, boom, 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 left, right, left. But that wasn't the case. There was a lot of people there. There's different types of noises everywhere, from the vehicles, from the other music they were playing, from the crowd. So when you're marching that long for that far, people aren't really going to be into it. And anyone who's been in the military know that we are not there to march. We are not the Chinese army or the Japanese army where that's all we do is march, or the North Korean army. We don't march for stuff like this. They do that all the time. We fight to win wars. That's what we do. We train to fight. Yes, we'll do some marching in between every now and then for change of command ceremonies, for some type of BS ceremony, dog or pony show. Actually, the person in the military, they know that. But to say that we're there protesting, that is not the case.
Compare that to what we see in China or North Korea. Those parades are tight, robotic, every soldier in perfect lockstep. Because in authoritarian regimes, military parades are a test of loyalty, a show of total control. But here in the
it
US,
is
well,
not.
the cracks showed. But what if that was the point? One former soldier put it like this, quote, "It takes about a week of drill and basic to learn how to march. Once you do, it's ingrained in you for life."
That is false. That is completely false. Yes, you do learn to march for a week in basic training. That's basic training. When you get to your actual unit after you graduate from basic training and AIT, advanced individual training, you go off to your unit and you learn your specific job that you join the military for. You may march maybe like in a actual legitimate organization maybe once or twice a year, like I said, for chain of command ceremonies. And you will march from formation from point A to point B doing small things. But on a daily basis, no, we don't do stuff like that. We'll run and there's always a cadence caller or there's someone keeping us in step. But just to do it, willy nilly on a daily basis, that is not the case. We do not march all the time like that.
You self correct if you fall out of step. You've got a point person calling cadence. So when the whole formation is off, this clusterfuck of a parade leaves me with only one conclusion. This was a silent protest.
There was no one there calling cadence, though. That's the thing. And you don't self correct when you start falling off. Someone has to call you back in step because they'll look at you when they notice, they go left, left to direct that towards you to know, oh, that's me. I'm out of step. Let me get back in. There is no self correction. Some people do, some people don't. A lot of people don't actually. That's why there's always a cadence call, especially when you're running, because everybody has different lengths and stride when you're running and when you're marching. So you will know that you're out of step if someone hits the back of your heel with the opposing foot. Like they hit your left foot with their right foot or something like that because you're out of step. Because both legs, left going forward and rights are going forward. If you continue that, you'll never go out of step. But her saying this was a solid protest is completely false.
Foxtrot Delta Tango. This wasn't about honoring the troops. Let's be honest. This was about honoring Trump on his birthday, on the Army's anniversary, co opted by a wannabe dictator. And maybe, just maybe, these soldiers didn't
See that? That is not a march. That's just a walk. They're probably route step, like I said before. Yeah, that's what it looks like. It's a route step.
play along. Because in America, you can't fake loyalty, co-opted by a wannabe dictator. And maybe,
See, look at
just
that.
maybe,
That's not
these
marching.
soldiers
That's
didn't
just
want to play
regular
along.
walking.
Because in America, you can't fake loyalty. And these soldiers showed you sure as hell.
Okay, when they're more robotic, like more mechanized, they're doing like with an actual step with a purpose. That's marching. But it takes people who've marched a long time to know that. If you're fresh, like all those people are probably, a lot of those people probably haven't been in the military over 5 years. Some are, some aren't. But not everyone's going to march the same tune to the same beat.
Can't force it. What if the soldiers in Trump's military parade were silent?
See, look at that. They're following along the curve. It's crazy. They don't have a cadence caller. They don't have a cadence caller. They probably were in step. The guy that's right there, there's a cadence caller.
Protesting. Many people noticed the soldiers didn't march.
Look, they're different beats, different speeds, different rhythms.
In unison. They weren't in step. The lines were crooked. Some looked like they didn't want.
See, they're standing. That's posting up, waiting to receive orders. Anyone who's been in the Army, like I said, they know that. But I don't know. Let me chime in. Let me know what you guys feel about this. Let's look at some of these comments before I go. So, yep, it was so notable that these soldiers didn't want to be part of the charade. That's false. Some people do, some people don't. Let's hope that's a positive sign, not to just be gasping for positive straws. This was 100% protest in the face of a dictator. He got the parade from Timu. All armies worldwide protest the same way. By disrupting formation, you really do a lot of damage to a military parade. Again, I'm sure that it wasn't on purpose. Someone said they were paid actors. Their uniforms also look disheveled. This is the typical duty uniform on a daily basis. We're not allowed to press this uniform. You wash it, you throw it in the dryer, you put it on. You don't iron it. I don't understand why. This is the OPC. Oh yeah, OCP, the operational camouflage pattern. Because it has different stitching as compared to the old school BDUs, the green, OD. That's the OD green, black, and brown. I forgot that pattern. I haven't worn that since basic training. But yeah, it's a completely different uniform. So this one you don't like I said, iron or press. You just wash and wear. This is supposed to be combat uniform, not nicely dressed, pressed, ready to impress. They didn't want to be there. Some people don't, because when you feel like when you going to be marching that far on your day off, because a lot of these people, you know, they probably had the day off. Saturdays is when we do. Saturday and Sunday we get days off like everybody else. But I'm not understanding why people are trying to say that they were in protest. I have faith now the military would choose the Constitution when the time comes. Of course, this is the first I've ever seen the military out of step and not looking sharp. That's false. If you're in the military, people know. If you're training up for it, because something like this big, you're gonna have like a week to 2 weeks of training up for it, and you get various units from around the military, from the army specifically, to come together to do this march. And then everything was thrown together. Yeah, they planned it like 2-3 months out, but we don't just come together and just march because we might find time in our work schedule within a week to march maybe 4 times maybe, and that's maybe an hour, 2 hours at a time because we have stuff to go on. We have training calendar to fulfill, near and far or near and long term training, and we always have to plan for that. We can't just throw training in there. Oh, we got to march. Like I said, even with change of command ceremonies on post, you know, we train up maybe a couple of days before it actually happens because there's so much shit to do. But those who aren't in the military, they don't know that. But that's my thoughts on it. That's my concerns. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Let me know how you feel. And catch you next video. Peace.